All right, y'all. Welcome to the show. So it was Trump arraignment day yesterday. I'm gonna dive into that and give you a full breakdown. That'll be the leading story here in just a second. Later on in the show, we have Ben Shapiro viciously lying about Bernie Sanders in a way that's low, even for Ben Shapiro. And we have an interesting debate back and forth between Destiny and Tim Pool. It's about the Trump indictment and basically like presidents being criminals. So we'll dive into that. Now, before I continue, by the way, click that like button, click that subscribe button. We're trying to get, we crossed that million threshold, which we're very happy about, but we're trying to, keep the momentum going because who knows the next time that we'll hit a massive roadblock on YouTube and be stuck dead in the water for a year like we were previously. So anyway, click that like button, click that subscribe button, click that bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. And remember, you can always support the show on Patreon, link in the video description box below. And you can always listen to the full shows on Spotify. If you want to listen as a podcast version as opposed to going video for video on YouTube, you can always listen on Spotify. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. So yesterday was Donald Trump arraignment day, and we learned a lot of interesting things leading into this day. So, for example, he actually chose to hop on a plane and go to New York for it. They gave him the option of doing this on Zoom, and he turned it down. He said no, which is kind of surprising if you think about it, right? Like, if you're a former president, you're Donald Trump, you're trying to save face, like, you think he would, take whatever the path of least resistance is, whatever is the easiest way to go about it, but he didn't. Now, by the way, that tells you something, doesn't it? That tells you something about what he thinks of the case and how he thinks he can politically benefit as a result of it if he makes a bigger show of it. Now, the other thing is we learned, and this, broke many hearts across the country, is that there was going to be no like formal arrest. So no handcuffs, of course. And then also no mugshot. I didn't know this, but apparently the only reason why they do mugshots is so that you can identify a person. And I mean, obviously, the overwhelming majority of the time somebody gets arrested, they're not famous. And so, like, you need to know who it is. So they take the picture. But in the case of Trump, obviously, he's like one of the most famous people in the world. So they didn't take the mugshot. So that's a little bit disappointing if you ask me. All the fun is sort of taken out of the situation. So he leaves from Mar-a-Lago, hops on a plane. Now, by the way, the media has been insufferable every single step of the way. Now, I'm not saying this isn't a huge story. In fact, it is the biggest story, and it's rightfully the biggest story. But guys, we snapped right back into 2016 mode. If anything, it was worse than 2016 mode. CNN had, I think it was up on their website, a tracker of Donald Trump's plane where it just showed the path. Like, hold on. There, like, everybody knows the flight path from New York to Florida, or Florida to New York. That's not a question. Like, obviously we know what that's going to look like. CNN had somebody in a speedboat trying to record the landing of Donald Trump's plane. I mean, remember, back in the day, they would show just like Trump's empty podium as Bernie Sanders was giving a speech. They could have cut to the Bernie Sanders speech. They're like, no, just keep showing Trump's podium. Guys, they help him so much without even realizing it. And of course, they're doing it to try to juice their own ratings. But like, this stuff ends up helping him so much because he becomes the show. He becomes the main attraction. So all the media hoopla, by the way, it got to the point where nobody was adding anything of substance on these media panels when they would talk about it. It was just like, the Charlie Brown noise. It was like, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Like that's where we were at. So he shows up to court. Now, they didn't allow video cameras inside the court. We do have accounts from media figures who were in the courtroom, though. They have some video of him, getting out of the car and walking in, and you could see him walking out of the courtroom. He didn't answer any media questions on the way in or on the way out. He looked relatively, I don't know how I would describe it, stern, sort of stone-faced for Donald Trump. Apparently, there was a moment in the courtroom where they said, look, if you're going to act up, there's going to be consequences. You understand that, right? And he let out a sigh and said, yes. Other than that, look, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but the way the day unfolded, and I'll get to his speech in a second because he gave a speech at night, but the way the day unfolded was kind of a bore. Because we're so used to looking at the Trump show, and the Trump show, honestly, it at times, it feels like it's as insane as some amazing fiction show, whether it's like The Sopranos or whether it's like Game of Thrones or something. And here we are, and it's like season 9 of the Trump show, and it opens with, oh my God, bro, he's going to get indicted and arrested, bro. And then now the day unfolds, and it's just like yawn fest. Like nothing interesting happened. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. He was relatively toned down for Donald Trump, at least when he was going through the process. His lawyers took some media questions outside of the event, and I don't think they did all that great a job of handling the media. The most interesting thing, I actually pulled it up for you right here. So Right Wing Cope says, Trump has been publicly attacking the judge plus DA, and screenshots just got passed out in court. So one of the things that the judge did is he took quite a bit of time to say, hey, look, man, we know who you are, obviously. We know what you do. But the fact of the matter is there are real life consequences to the things that you say. And here's an example of something you did that crossed a line. And we can't allow this. You can't tweet articles out that have a picture of you holding a baseball bat next to Alvin Bragg. You can't say the death and destruction type things, because these things, whether or not you intend it, these things can be viewed as the bat signal for your people to get out in the street, get violent. You know, you put a target on the back of the judge, you put a target on the back of the DA, and like basically they were like, get it together. Get it together. This is unacceptable. Well, then that opens the question, like, is Trump intentional when he does this stuff, right? Like, is he like, yeah, I'm kind of threatening you, and that's the point? Is that it? Or is it like he's just classic Trump, totally unhinged, shooting from the hip, and, you know, it just so happens that these people end up in danger? So that was passed out. Now, I don't know what recourse they have if he keeps going down this path. I know that they could do what's called a gag order, which is like now you're not allowed to talk about the case. I mean, that might be invoked, especially after the speech last night. I don't know. But I don't know. This potentially, if he's found guilty, this stuff might factor in when it comes to sentencing. So for him not to go through the process and try to be more reasonable, that might come back to bite him in the ass. Now, again, we don't know. There's no way of knowing at this early point. But it was certainly interesting to watch it unfold. Now, the other thing is, so he comes out at night, he gives his speech, and man, it was a low energy Don. I don't know what it is. Maybe he didn't take his Adderall that day. Maybe he didn't drink his coffee that day. But he just gave like a standard rally speech. It was, you know, he ran through his regular list of grievances, you know, witch hunt, political prosecution. He was doing his whole, like, you know, war in Ukraine, bad. I'd end it in one day. No World War III under Trump. We had tremendous success. We had the biggest tax cuts in history. We had the biggest regulation cuts in history. We passed right to try, folks, right to try. So you can try drugs that have not been approved. Like, he was bragging about stuff like that in the speech. And he even goes off, this was particularly funny in my opinion. He started going off on his other legal problems. So he lost focus on these legal problems, and he was like, and let me tell you something, folks. Joe Biden had many classified documents, massive amounts, tremendous amounts of classified documents. It's really something bad, folks. Thousands of them. He's the one who really obstructed. I never obstructed. Joe Biden obstructed. He obstructed everything, let me tell you. And so, but overall, low energy. The only part of it that I found interesting and noteworthy is that immediately after being told, hey, dog, you got to reel it in or there'll be consequences, he says this in the speech.
Indictment together. Came out today. Everybody said, this is not really an indictment. There's nothing here. My lawyers came to me and they said, there's nothing here. They're not even saying what you did. The criminal is the district attorney because he illegally leaked massive amounts of grand jury information, for which he should be prosecuted, or at a minimum, he should resign. And Alvin Bragg's wife confirmed a report that claimed her husband has Trump nailed on felonies. She has since locked down her Twitter account.
So, in other words, Trump went after the prosecutor and says, I'm not the criminal. You're the criminal. You should be prosecuted. You're the massively illegal grand jury information leak, unacceptable. So he said he should be prosecuted. And then the other thing is he calls out the wife here because apparently the wife is very anti-Trump, politically active. They, right-wing people dug up her old tweets as if it's some sort of aha, gotcha. And Trump Jr. and it may have been even more figures in Trump world than just Trump Jr., but I know Trump Jr. for sure. They posted a picture of the DA's daughter. And, they made a big deal about the fact that apparently she's politically active and she's a Democrat or whatever. And they were like, seems relevant. And they're putting up pictures of this. She's got nothing to do with this in any way, shape, or form. And they have to know that by putting that up, yeah, you're sort of putting a target on her when you do that. And so, again, this speaks to the main thing. Look, the main thrust here is this. Donald Trump may be in a position where he's Alex Jonesing his case. You know what that means? So the way the Alex Jones case unfolded was fascinating because they weren't actually able to get Alex on the merits. He was found what's called guilty by default, which means that during the Sandy Hook trial, he defamed the parents and all that stuff. He didn't cooperate with the court and give them the documents that he was legally obligated to give them. And so it was a very rare conclusion where they said, look, you're guilty by default. We can't get out of you what we need out of you. So it's not even necessarily on the merits that you definitely defamed them or whatever. It's that in discovery, you're not cooperating. And beyond that, when you're in court, you're a menace and you're shooting yourself in your own dick, basically. I remember watching that case and Alex would say something, then they would immediately play video of him saying the opposite on his show within the past week. They showed video of him calling the judge a demon who's part of a Soros deep state plot. And he got himself in the most trouble simply by not being able to reel it in a little bit. Now, this could happen with Trump too. I mean, the biggest thing on classified documents, for example, is that he obstructed, and now there's some reporting that there's video of him obstructing. So in other words, the original crime of he has the classified documents, yeah, that ultimately could have been a wash because Joe Biden had classified documents. Mike Pence had some classified documents. So it's hey, look, everybody's doing it. What are you going to do? What are you going to prosecute all of them? I mean, this was the approach people were taking. But if there's video of him obstructing and going through the boxes and ordering, his workers, and they're on the record now saying, yeah, he told me to move it from there to there or whatever. This is after they said, look, you got to give it all up. And he's like, sure, I did. And then he didn't. Well, that's what you're going to go down on. The same thing here. If you can't shut up and stop threatening the DA and the DA's daughter, there's going to be more consequences for your actions. So, I mean, that's my biggest take here is that he's such a moron and he only has one gear, which is offense, that he could end up screwing himself with how he acts in the process of the trial, similar to the Alex Jones situation, where Alex was his own worst enemy. So, incapable of reeling it in, clearly incapable of reeling it in. But ultimately, other than this angle of the story, it really was a snooze fest. And the rally speech really was bad. It was low energy. It was his normal list of grievances. And I'm curious to know, we'll end on this point here. I'd love to know what he's actually thinking, right? Because the whole Teflon Don narrative became a very strong narrative. And for a long time, it was absolutely true. But then you saw they lost 3 elections under him, right? So obviously the Teflon Don thing, not exactly right because he sort of helped tank the party. But did he buy into his own aura, right? This idea of you can't be beat? Does he believe that? Or secretly, is he shitting bricks? I mean, I guess we'll never know. But certainly the way he's acting now is not helping him in the case. I'll say that. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.